The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program, and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ. And boy,
TGIF.
We stopped the show off right even before we start, we're already going at it.
That's right. Well, we weren't going at it. We were having a very good discussion.
A civil discussion, too.
Yeah, a very, very good discussion about why Fall River is characterized the way it is. You know, and I think it was a good discussion because I think we all agreed that one of the problems is that Fall River isn't as bad as everybody says it is. It's not unique. It may be unique in Massachusetts, although I've been to Lynn and Lawrence, and they're pretty similar. But we all agreed that the problem is that just like they do with the gangs when they say we got a gang problem. No, we don't. It's not as bad as everybody thinks it is. Fall River has been demeaned for years, and our sitting politicians, their method of dealing with it is say, everybody else is wrong, we're right, this is a beautiful place, don't listen to them. Well, you know, the problem is they will continue to think about Fall River this way until you prove them wrong. And we all agreed on that. And I think that's true. Our political arm has never said, okay, we're going to prove to you that this isn't true. Fall River is a good place, and we do have a lot of good people in here. So, hey, but we got a lot of stuff on the agenda today, huh?
Well, the first thing I want to get into is a city councilor has been accused or was accused of releasing the information about the ARPA committee to social media outlets. You know, Jean St. Pierre, ourselves, and I can certify and say very clearly that Chris Peckham did not give us the information that we presented on the last show. Was not Chris Peckham. We have our sources, even within his ARPA committee. Okay, understand, Mr. Mayor, nothing is secret and nothing is sacred for you. We have our sources and we will continue to have our sources. And you need to understand that you cannot hide or lie anymore. We are going to call it out every time. But Chris Peckham released a statement, which I'd like to read. I was notified today by the city clerk, the city council secretary, that this is public information. Therefore, I'd rather this release of information and or email come from me personally than a third-party source. As an elected official and as someone named to this committee, ARPA, for oversight, I find it pertinent to represent the people of the city and hope its expenditures are spent conservatively in the best interest of the city and its constituents. This is what I sent to the Mayor Coogan, the city clerk, and the city council. Someone else took the initiative to release the information to local social media outlets, and I will confirm that is true. As I wrote to the mayor, my tenure on this council will remain 100% truthful. We were both there and heard the same. As a matter of fact, there were many of us there that heard the same. I will once again, as in the email, acknowledge CFO Sahadi for her questioning back of these statements. This money is not a free for all, quote unquote. It was given with a specific purpose and should be taken seriously as such.
Well, let me reinforce that from you. I got that the text that I read verbatim from a text I got was not from Chris Peckham. And I can absolutely swear to that under oath. It was not from Chris Peckham. The fact is that I got that before Chris Peckham even began the process of making this public. And by the way, while we're on it, what was recommended there is illegal. It was misappropriation of federal funding. And I actually got a call on that after our last show, and somebody said, well, you're never going to be able to prove that, because what Fiola's going to do is say he misunderstood and that's not the way I meant it. But I had to correct, because our sources got even into more depth about what was said at that meeting. Because, and everybody get ready now, I hope you're all sitting down. I'm going to give Mary Sahadi a compliment. I was told by the source, another source, that Mary Sahadi, when that was said, there's my dog, so now you know why I got that thing over the mirror, because if I have that sheet down, she will be barking at herself through the entire program. So, all right, Abby, say hello to everybody. You're on camera. But Mary Sahadi actually said when they said, don't worry about it, we'll probably never get audited. She said, well, I'm paraphrasing because this is like third hand, but somebody told me, she said something to the effect that you will ultimately get audited, and then the city will be in trouble. You may not be here anymore, but fundamentally, in general, she said, this is not legal. And when we do get audited, we will be on the hook. But there again, there's your proof. There's your proof. Bring her in, swear her under oath. She's a CPA. She has to tell the truth about this stuff because she is a fiduciary. So she said that in the meeting. So obviously the intent of what was said was to misappropriate the money. Not only should somebody be notified, the Fed should be notified. I think the city council has an obligation to say, we want an immediate audit after the funds are expended to ensure that they were expended properly. That's what should be done. Because again, we got a whole bunch of political people in there advocating for their own agendas, not for the public, not for the taxpayer, not for the city of Fall River. And as I said on the last show, I don't blame them. That's their job. Hedzler's going to advocate. Is going to advocate for the industrial park. The city, the Chamber of Commerce is going to try to get their tax rate lowered. It's all about them, not about the taxpayers. So they're going to get the tax rate lowered for the businesses while the businesses charge triple because of inflation. So, this is nuts. And this is not the way business is done. This is not the way business is done. There's no transparency, all backdoor deals, and most of it is not in the best interest of the city. That's why this is wrong. This is a crime. Misappropriation of funds is a crime. And to suggest that, and especially someone who's an attorney, could be disbarred, in my opinion.
I agree. And it's funny you should say Hedzler, because some of the comments that we received from people who were on the committee, Karl Hedzler advocated for money for the industrial park. Why? The industrial park isn't going to contribute to the city's economic development. He wants new roads. We know that. He needs infrastructure repair. As it was, the city of Fall River paid for them to get high-speed internet for their economic development. Ken Fiola made the statements he did. Who was the other one? Oh, Mike Sullivan, who was representing the chamber, said he wants that money used to reduce the taxes of the businesses. You can't use that money to reduce the taxes of the businesses. So right there, that was, we're going to spend it any way we want. Now, I was told by several sources that when it came up for Paul Furlan from the water department to ask to say what he wants the money to be used on, the mayor stopped him from saying anything and said, "We know what you want and it's too expensive, so we're going to move on." And he moved on. The mayor didn't even want to hear about the water department. Maybe he's heard enough about it. Maybe not. Maybe he doesn't care.
Maybe because it was for the city of Fall River and not for a special interest group. And listen, as far as Hedzler's concerned, that's his job. He's the president of the association. Let him advocate.
That's right.
But let's look at that. Why should an industrial park in a community that wants to become more viable economically, why hasn't the city fixed the roads? As far as I know, isn't the industrial park in the city of Fall River? Why hasn't somebody brought that up? And why haven't we done that? Because why? The last thing people get are residential streets, any kind of relief, and this proved it. This proved it. Beyond the shadow of a doubt. What they did was have a pity party for their self-interest. And they wanted to spend money right out of the gate, knowingly that it was not covered. It was not covered. And this is illegal. I cannot believe somebody actually said, let's misappropriate the money and hope we don't get caught. At least while we're still here. That's just inexcusable. And obviously, he's going to say that's not what he meant. But the reality is we've gotten this from now numerous sources.
Correct.
Numerous sources. And as I said, I fall back on my on what buttresses that argument by saying that it had to be in that basic context if Mary Sahadi, and remember, this is somebody that said, she allegedly said this, but I don't doubt it. She is a CPA and she is bound by a canon of ethics like attorneys are, and she's also an attorney. I mean, she had a fiduciary obligation to say that, look, we can't intentionally misappropriate money and hope we don't get audited. That's like, then I guess if we can do that, nobody should ever again investigate welfare fraud or payroll fraud or anything, because we've got a city with a mayor sitting in a room basically even considering misappropriating money. Either they really don't understand or they just don't care.
I agree. I'll tell you. I was just I wasn't not paying attention. I was reading Chris Peckham's email to the mayor and the city council, and it's very well written. I'm not going to read it all here, but he quotes people, and the quotes are exactly what we said. Mayor Coogan, we were all there and did hear and witness Mr. Ken Fiola's statements that, quote, "We cannot be conservative with this money. We'll never spend it all," unquote. "The feds will never audit $22 trillion, again, quote. "In my opinion, Mr. Fiola was insinuating to just spend it on whatever we want, whatever we needed to." This sparked an immediate response from CFO Mary Sahadi, as she did follow up by stating that she has been a CPA and the majority of her life, and she has spent as an auditor 40 years. Quote, "I respectfully disagree, Mr. Fiola. Me and Paul, the mayor, are getting older. We won't be here when and if an audit happens. Mr. Fiola did mention several more times during the meeting that we will never be audited. As an elected official and an appointed member to this task force, I have spoken to the council president as to what I should do with this information. Therefore, writing this email should be sufficient notification that although I did not make the initial notifications to local media outlets, I have absolutely no issue with relaying or passing along information from these meetings, be it good or bad." So, I mean, right there, Chris Peckham put the mayor on notice. So let's see if the mayor requests that he be reappointed somewhere else. Okay, because he's going to think that no matter what happens in those meetings, it's going to become public, which it should become public.
Well,
which it should be public.
Well, the horse is out of the barn. No
That's
matter
right.
what happens at the subsequent meetings, the reality is that, as I said, Mary Sadie can mark this on her calendar, but I always do give credit where credit is due. She was exactly right, and that was a quote. I didn't realize that was in the because I didn't read that. I don't do Facebook and stuff, but you know that. But so actually, they corroborated what I got as information, and he said it was a quote. So obviously, they were told that this is wrong. It's illegal. Now, look, this is a blue state. You know how the blue states are. They redefined infrastructure to cover everything from diapers to baby bottles and not roads and things. But they may even authorize some of the stuff. But you know what this is? This is someone advocating misappropriation of federal funding. That's a crime. That's a crime.
Correct.
And you know something? The city council should. Mr. Fiola said they won't get audited. I believe the fiduciary responsibility of the city council is to ensure that they're audited. After that statement, if I was on the city council, I would move to inform the federal government that after we're done investing this money, we want a full audit from the federal government to ensure compliance.
I agree. I agree 100%. And it's very interesting. But do you notice how right away, they pick one person, put the blame on them to say that we got our information from that person? Don't get me wrong. We get information from a lot of places, a lot of different places, and a lot of different people. And there is nothing secret in government center. The place leaks like a sieve. Okay, it really does. It leaks like a sieve.
You're right.
And, we hear it all the time. And it's sad that this is how people have to find out. But think about this for a moment. If it wasn't for social media and the availability of information on the social media, which can sometimes be very bad, we would have never known about this right away. Because even the Herald News didn't focus on that letter. No, they focused on the emails and text messages from Sean Kadim, which is also something we need to talk about today. They've actually published some of the emails, although they put it in a tiny, tiny box, and you can't. It's like
you can't read it.
Well, it's, you can read it, but it's like in two. Like here it is: to all, Mayor Paul Coogan, Sahadi, Mary, and each of these is a different line. CC City Clerk, City Clerks, City Council. I mean, it's very, very interesting how they did that. But some of the things that they said, Cliff Ponte made it very clear when he said to the mayor that he supports Sean Kadim. He was doing his job, and you have to admit, hey, it makes absolutely no sense for him to not do his job. And furthermore, what really is interesting is Pamela Liberté said, furthermore, if an investigation moves forward, I'm officially requesting that the attorney find out who sent Mrs. Sahadi's email to WSAR in an obvious attempt to paint Councilor Kadim in a bad light. Is that not considered bullying? Very good. I mean, she did that just right. So it makes... And then regarding the June 8th exchange between himself and Sahadi, who has declined to comment on this situation, Kadim acknowledged that frustrations may have come to a head during the meeting. Quote, sometimes my tone and my passion for the city is there, and I get very frustrated. I am vocal, and some people are just offended that I speak my mind. Well,
yeah. Well, listen, first of all, let me get back to the other thing you talked about. I think it's really comical that they haven't figured out yet after all these years that we find out what happens in meetings sometimes as the meetings are going on.
Exactly.
It's like they were surprised that this stuff got leaked. I mean, there's nothing safe. That place leaks like a sieve, and we always get information. We've had letters stuffed under our windshield wipers. Remember that one? I walked out, I had a letter. Yep. When we had a big controversy about that. You've had things left at your house and your car.
Here they are.
Yeah. And I mean, look, they're amazed. No, they're not. People want these things to come out. And as far as Kadeem is concerned, listen, I said it on the other show. He's he's trying to be diplomatic. He's being a politician. And, that's one of the reasons I could never be a politician. I've been asked to run for office numerous times. I just don't have the personality to be a politician because, I'm going to call it the way I see it, and I'm going to call it in the terms that suit me. He said it was a lie, and it was a lie. There had been transfers done. There always has transfers done during the year. So maybe people, as we said on the last show, could disagree. They get offended because they get offended if you use the wrong pronoun now. They want to throw you in jail and cancel you, no matter what you've done in your life. No matter what good, you're going to be canceled by the wokies. So, I don't care about the wokies. I've got a finger that I could point at them and tell them I don't care about you. And it's not the appropriate finger to point. But I'll tell you right now, you called her a liar. So what's the difference between saying that's a mischaracterization, that isn't accurate? What you're basically saying is she's full of crap on that. Okay? That's it. And she's been full of crap on a lot of things she presents before the council. Because when she goes to the council, she's presenting the city and the mayor's agenda. They want to pad the bill like they did with healthcare, or they want to do something else. And you shouldn't be apologizing because it's your job. And if people don't like the word you used, well, so be it. A lie by any other name is still a lie. And that's a paraphrase of Shakespeare. But the fact is, that's the truth. If what she was saying was not true, then it's a lie. And you proved it. You said you apologized, but you took the time before the apology at the council meeting to basically read every transfer that was made prior to the end of the year. So you proved your point. So now what are we debating here? This is woke BS because we're debating the word, not the fact that what he said was true, but the word, which is, like I said, you want to be a wokey, but I'm not. So, I mean, that to me, this is much to do about nothing. Sean Kadeem, Pamela Taylor-Bowe, and the rest of the city council were doing their job.
Isn't it interesting, though, that when these complaints were coming up on the school superintendent, Paul did absolutely nothing to investigate it. But as soon as one of these complaints come up against a city councilor that obviously Paul either doesn't like or doesn't agree with or doesn't get along with, an investigation starts the next day. Tell me that's not political pandering.
Well, I mean, it's pretty obvious because why didn't the mayor open up an investigation immediately when the Gang of Four tried to keep him? The city does have a policy, and it applies to all city employees, as I said.
I go one better than
a harassment policy that is a city document. Applies to the school department too. And as I said, when I was on the fire department, we had to annually review that harassment policy, sexual harassment policy. So why didn't the mayor initiate his own investigation and fire him? Let the city fire him. Oh, I don't have any jurisdiction. Well, yes, you do. He violated a city policy, one that applies to the school department, because that con job that the Gang of Four did say, oh, we don't have any policy. Well, the question to that is, why not? Why? To cover all your other political hack friends that are violating the law? But, this is everything that's wrong with Fall River. When we talked about why Fall River is looked on with such disdain by people, this is the reason. This stuff is allowed to happen.
Well, and again, as I said about the investigations when they were started, why didn't Paul start an investigation when these complaints came out? Because they came out months before it all came to a head, and they had to hire an attorney. Why wasn't an investigation started then? Why? What does Matt Malone have on him? What does Matt Malone have on the Gang of Four? Why was it okay for Matt Malone to do it, but it wasn't okay for Sean Kadim to ask a serious question, which I don't consider bullying. I don't consider what he did bullying. But he's going to be investigated for bullying, but Matt Malone didn't have to be until this came to a head, and people like us made it very public. Very public.
And you're right, CG, but remember what you just did. You held up those complaints and you read them on the show.
That's right.
So they suppressed all this bullying and all this inexcusable behavior for months before it finally came to a head. There were people being bullied and badgered that had to leave, had nervous breakdowns or on the verge of nervous breakdowns. And this bunch of supposed city officials buried it, hid it, and to this day, they're still suppressing most of the evidence. Where was the investigation on school committeeman Corey when he virtually assaulted Colin Dias? He was in his face, threatening him. The kid was very upset.
And it took place in the government center.
Exercising his freedom of rights. Where's the bullying investigation? They're going to, Sean Kadim makes a statement that, well, you could say, well, a lie. Why? Why do politicians if you and I use the wrong pronoun, we're going to get canceled. Not that I care, but, we're going to get canceled. We're going to get annihilated on social media. But when a politician does it, it's always excused. Oh, you can't use that kind of language when you're talking to a city official. Oh, you can't do that. Ilhan Omar can turn around and call Israel and the United States terrorist organizations. And what do they say? Oh, that's not really what she meant. But when a Democrat says it, when somebody else says it, they're no good. They have to be canceled and eliminated. That is not equality. That is not freedom of speech. That is not due process. We're violating half the Constitution every day. Politicians are a privileged class. They do not. Swalwell slept with a Chinese spy. He's still on a foreign relations committee.
Right.
I mean, give me a break, will you? I mean, if anybody hasn't figured out that Washington is just a giant sewer that's run by the bureaucrats, and all the Congress and Senate does is make themselves rich and politic, they need to really go for some psychological counseling.
Well, there's no question about it that we know a few politicians that can use some psychological counseling, and some appointed people too. So it's nothing new, especially for us. But I will say one thing, because this was part of our conversation before the show went on the air. The perception becomes the reality. And that's why people perceive Fall River to be the only place this happens. We know this isn't the only place it happens, but that's the perception. And we have to accept that sometimes, because remember, perception does become reality. Well, that's the end of our show. I want to thank you for watching. Remember, keep paying attention to your politicians. Hold them accountable. Stay safe, stay angry, and have a great weekend. We'll see you on Monday.